Observe!
I've never seen anything like this. Defeat it for me.
Is an illusion, everlasting fire!
Stand still. Strong and armed.
Hello. Today I would like to discuss my new bow build in 3.21 Crucible League. I think this is one of my most unique builds I've ever created. It started off with me trying to determine how to best use Manaforged arrow support. And while most people are using this as basically to keep up frenzy charges, power charges, and ensnaring arrow on the target, I thought of it a little bit differently. So originally, I was thinking, like most people, that since you get more damage from the trigger when your skills cost more mana, that investing into mana cost and mana regen, basically making your build a mana stacker, would be most ideal for this build. But I found this not to be very true, as the investment in mana cost is just way too high, and really the only way to scale the mana cost is from Indigon. But if we use the Indigon helmet, we would lose a 1.5 damage multiplier on Crown of Eyes. So with mana stacking out of the way, the next way that you could potentially have made Manaforged Arrow is that you can set up multiple different 4 links or 6 links so that you could cast 3 abilities simultaneously. But again, I didn't feel like this was the best way to go, because why have 3 different abilities when you could have 11? And that's the strategy that I went with. So, as you can see, I have Manaforge attached with Storm Rain, Rain of Arrows, Toxic Rain, Blast Rain, and Galvanic Arrow. This is my basically AoE setup, so I have 5 different abilities in there. The reason I went with Storm Rain is because I have lots of plus arrows, and so the ground will basically be massively covered up with Storm Rain, and it actually does a lot of single target damage. I have Rain of Arrows, basically for map clear. I have Toxic Rain, somewhat for map clear, and also there's quite a bit of overlap on large bosses. Blast Rain, same thing, map clear and lots of overlap on bosses. And Galvanic Arrow, because I'm pretty sure it shotguns. So that's my AoE setup. Now for my single target setup, again, I have Manaforged supported with Frenzy, so this is where I get my Frenzy charges, and it does a decent amount of damage. I have Ensnaring Arrow, again, for the 20% increased projectile taken on the enemy, and it also has a lot of damage, actually. It has like 176% attack damage base, and I have Tornado Shot. And the reason I have Tornado Shot is, again, because I have lots of additional projectiles, so it fires 8 projectiles, which is a lot of single target damage. And finally, I have my last Manaforged support. I have that linked with Ice Shot, Lightning Arrow, and Burning Arrow. And this is basically just because there's not many other better abilities to put in here, and each one does a decent amount of damage and AoE map clear. So Ice Shot has decent map clear because it has a cone damage. Lightning Arrow is actually really good for map clear because it explodes on each pierced target in an AoE. And I have Burning Arrow, which is basically single target damage. So now that I explained that I shoot 11 different abilities, how do I go about this? So, like I said, I did not invest into mana. I actually invested in mana reduction. So, here's an example. Basically, all the abilities do the exact same thing. So, my Storm Rain cost 8 mana. And to trigger this, it costs 24 mana. So, I trigger this by casting Scourge Arrow. So Scourge Arrow is very specific. You can either do the new Snipe support or Scourge Arrow to trigger it. And the reason you basically have to do this, I haven't found a workaround, is that you need a channeled skill to spend mana to proc non-channeled skills procs, because these -7 on the rings reduce the mana cost so low that we can proc this extremely fast. So for example, all my 11 abilities proc every 0.42 seconds, and my attack speed on my channeled skill is 0.23. So every 0.46 seconds, and I also have frenzy charges, so it's actually pretty close to the 0.42, I will proc all my abilities. And you can see this now. So if I click it once, it procs some of them, because for example here, this Ice Shot mana cost is 6, but I have to spend 18 mana to use it. And since my Scourge Arrow is 18 mana, it procs some of them. But for others, I need to cast it twice. So if I hold down Scourge Arrow, again, every 0.42 seconds, it'll shoot all the abilities, and it'll look something like that. So now that I can cast 11 abilities every 0.42 seconds, and I have unreserved mana of 300 or so. One, because I'm super socket starved, so I can't really run another aura. And also, there's not really another aura that's going to benefit me. As in, there's no other 25% aura that would be beneficial. Also, there's some map mods where I need a decent amount of mana, and or there are boss fights where they go invulnerable, so I can't leech. So basically, I keep up a decent amount of unreserved mana so that I can channel for roughly, 3 seconds without hitting a target. And then all I do is have to hit a target every, once every 3 seconds, and my leech will easily sustain the amount of mana cost that I use. So now you can see how I use all the skills. Now, how do I actually get all the damage? Now this is where the stat stacking comes in. I have, add that up, roughly 3,500 stats, and stats on this build are pretty broken. So let's start with Dex. Dex is giving me spell suppression because I have Mage Bane, and since I have over 1,000 Dex, Mage Bane alone is giving me like 70% spell suppress, which is insane. The next thing it's giving me is it's giving me all my accuracy. So I'm pretty sure I don't have any percent accuracy on the tree. Actually, I have one, but whatever. I haven't invested pretty much anything into accuracy. All my accuracy is from Dex, so that's extremely important. Next, we'll go to Intellect. Intellect is very important because we want a really large mana pool so that we can have this 300 unreserved mana so that we can actually use our abilities. And also, since we are Inquisitor, we need Strength and Intellect for crit. So just my Intellect and Strength is giving me 100% crit chance, which is pretty good, along with some other things like my Glove Corruption and my Crucible Tree, which I'm using less attack speed and more crit chance. But just Intellect, Strength, and those two things are giving me 100% crit chance. Next thing is Strength, which is extremely, extremely important. Although, if you have an imbalance, it's less important. But Strength, obviously, is giving us lots of life. So I have a decent health pool of over 5,000. And additionally, we are using Iron Will. So the Strength melee attack benefit gets converted into spell damage, and now our character has few thousand spell damage. But also we amplify this by 2 items, which isn't very unique. It's done in quite a few builds, and that is I use Crown of Eyes. So all the spell damage that I get is multiplied by 1.5 times. And in addition to that, I have Iron Fortress, which again multiplies it by 1.5 times. And so these 2 items with all the strength that I have is insane. Now the last thing where I get an insane amount of damage from, at least with stats, is the Cyclopean Coil, and it is giving me 1% damage per 5 of my lowest attribute. And along with that, I also have the Mastery of 1% damage per 5. And the last things that I'll talk about, so since we are obviously extremely socket starved, I can't link a bunch of increased crit to all my links since I have 100% crit chance, but all of my passive points are basically going into attributes. So this is where Maligaros comes in, because without this, I'm just at the base 150. So this item doubles my damage. And the last thing, sorry, bow market, but I'm going to have to share share it. These two items will be going up in value a lot after I release this video. So if there's any on the market, and it may not be a cheap build after this, depending if you think the build is good or not. So the first item, it has the maximum perfect 250 roll. The reason this 250 roll is important is because it multiplies our quiver in an interesting way, because PoE sometimes, I guess, I don't know, rounds up. So it is multiplying this quiver. This quiver is giving us lots and lots and lots and lots of flat damage with all the attributes that we stack. But the 250 multiplies this in a beneficial way. So I believe this adds 1 to 2 cold damage. It's multiplying that 1 by 2.5 and then rounding up. So it goes 2.5 to 3, so it's 3 to 5 instead of 1 to 2. I've tested this because previously I was using like a 238 quiver, and once I equipped the 250, my DPS went up by, I don't know, like 15% or something. It's working like that. And lastly, another interesting roundup is the implicit on this bow's attack with additional arrow. This is being multiplied by 2.5 and then rounding up. So this quiver is actually giving me 3 additional arrows. So yeah, these items are going to be very expensive now that I shared the secret, but if you can get them, they are very good. So that's my little summary of my build. The path of building will be in the description. I thoroughly enjoyed this build, and I will keep playing it. Maybe there's a little bit more min-maxed, but I cleared all the bosses. Have not yet gone to Ubers because it's pretty early into the league. But if you like the build or have any comments, put them in the comments, and I'll get to them. Thanks.